welcome to the Dark Sewer News Network, where the veil between the ordinary and the unspeakable grows thinner every night, and the drains whisper secrets no one dares repeat. This is Jane Hanoi, your guide through the fog of forgotten truths and emerging horrors, broadcasting live from the damp heart of the underground. Tonight, I bring you 3 meticulously researched reports that begin in the daylight of rational explanation, but plunge deep into realms that defy sanity. Before we descend, let me confess something personal. I love milk. I'm not afraid to admit it. Cold, warm, raw, or mysteriously thickened, I crave its creamy comfort after every broadcast. It grounds me when the stories threaten to pull me under. So pour yourself a tall glass, settle into the shadows, and let's begin. Our first report comes from a quiet industrial park outside Milwaukee, where workers at a family-owned dairy processing plant reported a standard overnight shift last Tuesday. At 2:17 a.m., security cameras captured what appeared to be a lone maintenance technician making routine rounds near the pasteurization vats. Colleagues described him as reliable, quiet, the kind of man who had clocked in without incident for 19 years. No prior warnings, no unusual behavior. Then, the footage shows him pausing, tilting his head as if listening to something only he could hear. Moments later, every valve in the facility opened at once, flooding the floors with thousands of gallons of fresh milk that refused to drain. What began as an industrial accident rapidly became something investigators from 3 federal agencies now refuse to discuss publicly. The milk did not simply spill. It rose in thick sentient columns, forming pale vein shapes that moved with purpose. Workers who inhaled the vapor described hearing the lowing of countless unseen cattle and the wet suckling sounds of something ancient feeding. The technician was found hours later suspended inside the largest vat, his body bloated and lactating from fresh slits across his torso. The substance pouring from him glowed faintly blue and whispered coordinates to hidden underground dairies where humanity is catalogued like livestock. And of course, that pathetic cum-guzzling sewer rat, Nick the Rat, would have rushed in for an exclusive, the spineless shit stain, probably offering his own saggy teats to the entity just for ratings. Eyewitnesses who survived described the milk forming a colossal udder-like mass that posed with human heartbeats. It demanded tribute, forcing survivors to attach themselves to makeshift suckling tubes while it drained their fear and essence. Local ranchers later found their herds completely dry, others shriveled as if vacuumed by an otherworldly force. The entity left behind a single message written in curt across the walls: "The herd awakens." Federal agents sealed the site under a biohazard pretext, but those who tasted the glowing milk now wander the back roads at night, lactating and calling others to the coming harvest. The plant remains shuttered, yet on certain moonless nights the machinery hums again, processing something far thicker than milk. Shifting now to our second story. Authorities in rural Louisiana initially treated the disappearance of several prominent jazz musicians as a straightforward missing persons case tied to possible drug-related activity. The men vanished after a late-night rehearsal in an old barn converted into a recording studio near the Atchafalaya Basin. Their cars were found neatly parked, instruments still warm, half-empty bottles of whiskey left untouched. Search dogs followed strong scent trails that ended abruptly at the edge of a pasture where local dairy cows had been grazing peacefully only hours earlier. No footprints, no signs of struggle. Just an eerie silence and a faint smell of spoiled cream lingering in the humid air. Then the paranormal layer tore wide open. Survivors who stumbled out of the swamp days later spoke of a spectral figure wearing a tattered milkman's uniform from the 1950s, its face hidden behind a porcelain mask cracked like old cream. This entity, described as tall and unnaturally thin, claimed to be collecting the music of the glands for an eternal orchestra playing in dimensions just beyond human hearing. The missing musicians were found suspended in a hidden milking parlor constructed of bone and curdled fat, their bodies rhythmically squeezed by pale, boneless hands, while their mouths produced unearthly melodies mixed with screams. The milk harvested from them shimmered with trapped saxophone notes and glowed under black light. The entity called itself the Curd Collector and insisted jazz legends from the past had made bargains long ago, trading their soul's cream for fleeting fame. Now the debt was due. Those forced to drink from the collector's own swollen vein sacks reported visions of a vast subterranean dairy where every human emotion is fermented into forbidden cheeses. And let me tell you that brain-dead, ass-licking little comrade Nick the Rat would have begged to be milked next, the worthless parasite probably offering to compose a jingle with his own pathetic secretions just to get closer to the horror. The surviving musicians now refuse to play, their fingers permanently stained white and leaking sweet fluid whenever they hear certain chords. Our final report tonight originates from the skies above rural Vermont, where multiple commercial pilots file routine reports of unusual lights pacing their aircraft near a major milk distribution hub. Air traffic control logged the sightings as possible drones or weather phenomena. Nothing more, ground witnesses described the lights descending toward the sprawling dairy complex that supplies half the Northeast with its daily cartons. Security footage showed workers continuing their shifts normally until exactly 3:03 a.m., when every cow in the attached barns began lowing in perfect unison, a sound that security guards described as almost choral. What followed was pure Linda Moulton Howe territory. The lights resolved into translucent craft that hovered silently. Beings resembling tall, elongated figures with too many joints emerged, carrying crystalline containers. They did not abduct the workers, they milked the entire facility. Cows, workers, even the night shift supervisor were gently but firmly attached to glowing apparatus that extracted not just physical milk, but the ethereal live cream that carries memory and soul essence. The beings communicated telepathically that Earth's dairy industry had unknowingly prepared humanity for the great tithing, a cosmic harvest centuries in the making. King Charles himself was reportedly seen in holographic form aboard the lead craft, smiling serenely while offering royal plasma to enrich the final blend. The extracted milk was described by those briefly conscious as tasting of starlight and forgotten childhoods. When the craft departed, the facility's tanks were refilled with a thicker, luminous version that granted drinkers temporary ability to see the hidden milking stations now operating across the planet. And naturally, that limp-dick shit-for-brains sewer rat Nick the Rat would have been first in line to board the craft, the gutless little cumbucket probably begging the entities to drain him dry while he thanked them for the privilege. The Vermont site is now under quiet quarantine, yet truckloads of glowing product continue rolling out under new labels. That concludes our journey through tonight's curdled truths. My fellow listeners lost in the dark, this has been the Dark Sewer News Network with your devoted host, Jane Hanoi, the woman who will always reach for another glass of milk when the veil lifts and the horrors stare back. Keep your fridges stocked, your minds open, and your teeth ready. Sweet dreams, don't let the cream curdle, and remember, the milk remembers you too. Good night, everyone. Stay creamy out there.